You probably buttoned a shirt today. Maybe you rolled out some dough for dinner, or played a quick game of Ludo. When you do these things, you are stepping perfectly into a daily routine that is 5,000 years old. Deep in the archaeological record of the Indian subcontinent, we find the exact physical matches for these modern habits. They left behind buttons carved from seashells, and perfectly cubic dice, and clay cooking pans, tawas, that look identical to the ones sitting in millions of kitchens right now. These artifacts belong to the Harappan civilization, which emerged around 3300 BCE. This was a colossal society, spanning 1.3 million square kilometers across modern-day Pakistan, Afghanistan, and northwest India. Their cities were engineered with aggressive precision. Streets were laid out on a grid, intersecting at exact 90-degree angles, and the structures themselves were built using baked bricks that strictly adhered to a 1:2:4 mathematical ratio. They even constructed highly sophisticated citywide covered sewer systems. Every house had access to drainage that whisked wastewater out of the residential zones, a level of civic sanitation that many modern cities still struggle to maintain today. We can map their sprawling brick foundations down to the centimeter. We know exactly where they lived and how they kept their streets clean. Yet we have found no monuments to specific kings, and we know nothing about their laws. The block in our understanding comes down to their writing. The Indus script contains around 700 symbols, mostly stamped onto tiny seals. Because we have never found a comparative text that translates these signs into a known language, like a Rosetta Stone, their meaning remains completely undeciphered. This is the central paradox of Harappa. We know exactly how their plumbing worked, but their thoughts and beliefs are invisible to us. To reconstruct their society, we have to interrogate the dirt. So, how exactly do you map the economy of a massive empire without a single readable tax receipt or ledger? This diagram of their building material shows how they did it. Those baked bricks, with their strict 1:2:4 ratio, are found in identical proportions across thousands of miles. To enforce that level of standardization across a vast territory, you need a highly capable, centralized administration. But when looking for leaders, the trail goes cold. Monuments of absolute power are missing. Instead, cities are divided into functional zones. Elevated citadels housed administration and public resources, while common citizens lived below, pointing to a cooperative ruling class. This civic organization fueled an economic powerhouse. They developed a massive international trade network, exporting highly refined, heavily manufactured goods, like these delicate carnelian and gold beads, all the way to the heart of Mesopotamia. To move these goods, they engineered sites like Lothal. Built near the Arabian Sea, Lothal featured the world's first artificial tidal dockyard and served as an enormous industrial hub, packed with advanced bead factories and copper workshops. The Harappans built a superpower through cooperative trade, advanced logistics, and robust civic organization, rather than the vanity of absolute monarchs. When a society leaves no readable texts, modern observers tend to step in and fill the silence with their own assumptions. Over the decades, several historical myths have grown around the Harappans. For a long time, it was assumed they were a completely peaceful utopia. But excavations at Sorkotada revealed heavily fortified walls and security checkpoints. We have also found specific weapons, proving they were well equipped for military defense. Another assumption was that the entire empire worshipped a uniform mother goddess, based on clay figurines found in the dirt. Closer inspection shows these rituals were likely highly localized. Many of these figures were tied to domestic household tasks or even used as children's toys, rather than being part of a sweeping state religion. Their actual belief system was deeply complex. We find clear evidence of tree worship and intricate artifacts like this Pashupati seal, featuring a seated figure surrounded by animals. The fiercest debate revolves around the language hidden in its top symbols. Researchers argue over connections to early Sanskrit or Proto-Dravidian. For example, Mesopotamian records use piru for imported ivory, closely matching ancient Dravidian words for elephants. Their historical silence has allowed modern observers to underestimate them, but the physical record proves their capacity for organized defense, ritual depth, and communication was as layered as the literate empires of Egypt or Mesopotamia. How does an empire this vast and structured simply disappear? For years, theories blamed dramatic, apocalyptic events like massive floods or an invading Aryan army. We now know those stories are inaccurate. The forensic truth is much slower and far more devastating. Over centuries, a shifting climate pattern gradually choked off their water supply. A massive, critical river system, known as the Ghabar Hakra, simply dried up. This triggered a fatal domino effect. Without the rivers, the agricultural surplus that fed the cities failed. Once the crops died, the international trade networks collapsed. The urban centers, starved of resources, could no longer support their massive populations. Between 1900 and 1300 BCE, the great Harappan cities were slowly abandoned. But the people themselves did not vanish. They packed up what they could and migrated east and south into the subcontinent. As they integrated into incoming groups, they brought their way of life with them. Their deep knowledge of agriculture, their board games, and their genetics became the permanent foundation of the region. A civilization does not need to erect giant statues of conquering kings to leave a mark on history. The Harappans authored the blueprint for modern urban living, and their true legacy survives right now, quietly in the everyday objects we still hold in our hands.